Let me quickly read out his bio, which you can also find at the back of the book when you have a copy or when you go to azumedia.com. You can actually have a lot of resources about the man. This is a man who has been practicing journalism for over 35 years, right from his days at the University of Lagos Department of Mass Communication. And when we talk about a proud alumnus of the University of Lagos, I'm sure Azu will come among those who are ranked, as one. So let me just read the bio of the man we have here briefly. Mr. Azu is currently the Senior Vice Chairman and the Editor-in-Chief of Leadership, a newspaper house based at the Federal Capital Territory in Abuja. And he has over 35 years experience in journalism. He was the editor and later executive director, and that was where I met him, of publications at Punch newspapers in Lagos. He was also the MD, EIC, and co-founder of the Interview magazine, a privately owned monthly question and answer magazine based in Abuja. He's a fellow of the Nigerian Guild of Editors, was editorial board member of the World Policy Journal. Maybe I should be pausing so that we'll be clapping. We should celebrate the man now. Okay, thank you. So, a former member of the World Editors Forum and a founding board member of the Global Editors Network. He was chairman of the judging panel of the CNN African Journalist of the Year. He is an author, a columnist of local and international reputes, and he has published beyond, Nigeria, across South Africa, South America, and even in the US. If you want to know more about the man, because I don't want me to waste time reading his bio, please follow him. So it's not just about knowing more about him, but also learning from him. It's very important. A round of applause for him again. So, Mr. Azikwe, you're welcome. Nice to have you in Unilag. I'm honored to host this event. I don't know why I have to take that baton, but I don't know. But I'm honored. I'm quite honored, especially when you consider that I trained under him and I did not, stay in the media, but even then, I'm still using my journalistic experience in my classroom. So my students can testify to that. So I'm blessed to host this event. So without wasting time, we'll go to the reading. And the reading will take, 40 minutes.
Gratefully thank the former president, one of the two former presidents of the Guild of Editors and former presidential advisor, Mr. Femi Additional, is also here. Perhaps he was missed in the call, but I thought it was important to mention that because he said, I know the things he had lined up today, but he set aside all of those things just to be here. I really appreciate that. And indeed, I appreciate everyone who's here. I'm not picking and choosing. I know that today is a very busy day in the University of Lagos. Students are taking their exams. And the number of the students here from the Faculty of Education actually would leave this hall to go and take their exams. I really deeply value and treasure that. So this is the first phase of the exam that you are taking. Those who are not here with you will be sorry that they are not here because you are going away with tips that will put you way ahead of them. So I must congratulate you for making time out. And indeed, I congratulate everyone who has come from far and near. My wife is also here. She's at the back. I'd like to thank everyone and all my folks. This is actually like I brought my community from from Magodo to Unilag, which was my home for a time. I was here for a number of years and also taught at the Department of Mass Comm on a voluntary basis. But that's not why we are here. So we just go to the business of the book reading. Professor Adeosun, thank you so much for being so gracious and extravagant with your praise of me. I don't think I deserve half as much as you have commended me, but that's okay. And thanks for accepting the honor of being both my interlocutor and the moderator at this event. Now, this book, Writing for Media and Monetizing It, you have asked me a question about whether there are some chapters I'd like to read. I'd really love to read every single page of every single chapter of this book, but I know you don't have the time for that. So I have chosen 5 chapters, and I have not chosen to read 5 of the 15 chapters. I've only chosen excerpts from each of the 5 chapters that I am going to read. But one thing I guarantee you is this, right? The passages that I have chosen to read from those chapters go to the heart of this book. I guarantee you that 100%. Now, the way the book is written is this. The 15 chapters, each, apart from the last chapter, which is chapter 15, each chapter begins with an epigram. You know what an epigram means, all right? This is a university. I don't want to undersell myself by trying to explain, but since the way to overcome temptation, according to Oscar Wilde, is to yield, then when you are yield, you are no longer tempted by that temptation. An epigram is essentially a short quotation, or if you know that's a short direct quote. That's what an epigram is. So the first 14 chapters begin with an epigram, which sort of summarize the essence of the book. And so, if I may, I'd like to start with chapter 1, which is one of the 5 chapters I am going to read. I'm just going to take just a few passages from there, and I'll be happy to take questions from the prof, which will be my own exam. While others are going to do their exam over there, I'll be taking mine on the stage. But the advantage I have over them is I have the book and I'm the author. So I don't know how she's going to back me down. So now we'll go straight to the business of the book reading. The first chapter, and I'll start with chapter 1 and take an excerpt from there. The only way to find your voice is to use it. And that's the epigram that starts chapter 1 of the book. The only way to find your voice is to use it. And that is taken from Mr. Jen Muller, an American TV and radio and sports journalist. Now, from this chapter 1, I will just read a few passages that summarizes this first chapter for me. And I'd read from, in case you have the book, I intend to read from page 3 of it. When I started writing nearly 4 decades ago, journalists describe themselves according to the categories of print, broadcast, photo. We worked in silos. The mediums of expression were printed newspapers or magazines or TV or more rarely, cinema. Content in these mediums was either straight news stories, commentaries, often in the op-ed pages, feature articles, documentaries, or stage plays that were often recorded for TV or radio. It's a different world today. A content provider can find voice through skits, blogs, and other creative forms that can be shared through social networks capable of reaching millions of people at the touch of a button. Now, that is the first part. Now, I will go to page 5 and continue the reading from there, how it all started. And that is how it all started for me. In my over 35 years of writing, I've experimented a lot, from writing love letters, I didn't just say that, from writing love letters in secondary school to several failed attempts at writing scripts for movies. I've also tried my hands at poems. Please don't ask me how that ended. From this chapter, there are some lessons that you can take away. Lesson number 1. You cannot find your voice without trying your hands at some form of writing or some form of content creation. To find, you must seek. Lesson number 2. Finding a model is a good way to start. After secondary school, I met a brick wall when I went to higher school. The principal of Jibril Martins Memorial Grammar School, Iponri, Mrs. Digali, where I did my HSC, said press activities were not permitted. I simply went on the ground, writing on loose sheets and pasting these around the school in some form of pseudo-piracy. At the University of Lagos, where I later enrolled to study mass communication, I met Dr. Olatunji Dari, as he then was, who was at the time on leave of absence as the chair of the editorial board of The Guardian, a major Nigerian newspaper. After several failed attempts and drafts bleeding with Dr. Dari's ink, I finally started getting my pieces published in the op-ed of The Guardian. Lesson number 3. Persistence is the key to self-discovery. Remember Jimmy Cliff? And if you can remember one of his songs, you may sing along with me while I take a bit from Jimmy Cliff. You can get it if you really want. You can get it if you really want, but you must try. Try and try, try and try. You succeed at last. Now, if you sang that song with me, I know how old you are. And if you didn't, I also know. But it's a song that teaches persistence. I'm of course not suggesting that I automatically found my voice by getting my articles published in the op-ed pages of The Guardian as an undergraduate of the University of Lagos. Not so fast. But that for me was a good beginning. Lesson number 4. You cannot give what you don't have. The more you expand your reading lists, and the more you make your own list, the more you will likely find your literary voice. Also, very good use of movies, especially ones with subtitles, could be good materials for improvement of language use. A good question would be, how do I test my voice? Remember the studio mic check before the real show begins. Apart from the language and grammar tools now embedded in many smart devices, you can find a sparring partner. I have more than one. It helps to have someone, especially someone who knows you and isn't afraid to tell you some bitter truths. Have a look at your draft. This form of feedback will improve your self-confidence. Lesson number 5, feedback. Feedback either in written or spoken form from a committed sparring partner is vital to self-discovery and personal literary improvement. Take it and use it. And to summarize this chapter for me will be a few of the takeaways from chapter 1. So one of the takeaways from chapter 1 is practice is the best way to find your voice, and you can start a blog right now. A role model or two will make your journey easier, so find a role model. Expand your reading list, and good films or documentaries or audiobooks are not a bad idea. Find a committed sparring partner or a mentor. Listen to your own voice and learn to improve it. Thank you.
That was a 2-hour lecture. Maybe copies of those love letters. If Sister Rume still has them, That would be very nice to know how you started off and how you romantic you can be.
Interestingly, Prof, she discovered one to my utmost displeasure.
That was nice.
She discovered one when we were going through some things in the house not long ago, and when she read it, I had to ask myself, "Now me write this thing? now maybe this."
In terms of being romantic or the crafting or what?
You know, I don't talk to journalists.
No. Am I one? Thank God I'm an educator. I'm a teacher, actually. So thank you so much. That was a whole 2-hour lecture. I'm sure that you were interested in digging more into all the tips that he had mentioned. I have 2 questions, but I'll retain one because of time. Throughout that chapter and throughout the book, actually, there is a phrase that resonates, throughout. Write the way you talk. Write the way you talk. Because I'm an educator, we always try to teach students the rudiments of writing, separate sometimes from speech. Because of formality, because of styles, and so on. I want you to actually expatiate on these and tell us, are we trying in the modern media to blur the lines between speech and writing? Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. And here comes the man of letters. Maybe I should just turn over to him, Mr. Sam Omashaya. Thanks for coming, Sam.
Welcome, sir.
Now, that's a great question, Prof. Whether we are trying to blur the lines. I guess that all lines these days are blurring. But I will tell you where I got my idea of writing the way you speak from. I remember, and I'll make this really quick because of time. I remember writing a term paper once, and I'm sure that those who know me are tired of hearing this story. I wrote a term paper for Professor Olatunji Dare, and I stayed back whilst other students were going for their term break. I stayed back. I wanted to kill the man, but I wanted to finish him. So then I wrote, and I thought I'd given it my best shot, and I submitted the thing to him. And Olatunji Dare looked at it, and he had a way that if Dr. Dare was laughing, I mean, you think that the whole place was shaking. A bit like my good friend Femi Adesina. But I mean, I submitted my term paper to him. And then he looked at my term paper, and he looked at it, and there was a visitor in his office. He looked at it, and I looked at it. He said, "Who wrote this?" And I said very proudly, I did, sir. He said, "What have you been reading?" Oh, I said, "I've been reading Charles Dickens, David Copperfield." And he looked at me again, and he looked at the script. And he shook his head. That was when I knew I was in. He said, "It doesn't show at all." Said, "What is this man talking about?" And then he looked at me and said, "This is a classic example of disco journalism." So, you could imagine, of course, he didn't mean any. And he said, "Just go and take this away and go back and write the way you talk." I took the script back, of course, with a heavy heart. But when I turned it back in, I got an A. So I learned my lesson the hard way, but I learned the lesson, and it's useful to me today. And it's something I've always shared. I think it's easier to write that way. You will, especially after writing, I also have a very clear habit of reading what I've written to myself. And I try to read it aloud. That way you get a sense. I know that as an expert in the field, phonetics and all of those things, but I have managed to write the way write the way I speak. And I think it has helped me, and it's something I'd like to share and to recommend for others.
Thank you so much for that explanation and the story. Please, a round of applause for him, please. The takeout from here, or the takeaway from here, is that you should be real, be yourself. And that's what we're talking about, voice here. That's the opening chapter, finding your own voice. So you cannot be Oscar Wilde or David Copperfield, but you can be you. And therefore, you need to culture and nurture the you. The second one is the role of feedback. Sometimes when we write and people, give feedback, maybe harshly or whatever, you think they're trying to diminish us, but try to take it as an opportunity for redefining yourself and refining your writing. And as you keep this going, you keep growing. Thank you so much for that experience you shared with us.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's go. Before we go to the next reading, I just must recognize I'm seeing very beautiful old faces I've known in a long while. So I must recognize them. Mr. Ademola Oshinubi was the MD of Punch when I was just a budding journalist. So you're welcome, sir, and I'm happy to have you in Unilag today. Mr. Lema Abdul, you're welcome, sir. Barrister Yinka.
Yinka Olumide Fushika.
Mr. Yinka Fushika, I'm sorry, Barrister Yinka Fushika, SAN. You're very welcome, sir. Daddy, am I allowed to call you Daddy? But you're looking very younger. Since the last time I saw you, Mr. Sam Omase. You're welcome, sir. Yes, acknowledge, but I need to welcome you, especially. I've seen some other faces, and of course, my husband is here. The husband of a professor, Dr. Adeni Adeoshi. You're welcome, sir. And I have my supervisor when I was doing my second master's, Dr. Patrick Oloko. You're welcome. Professor Patrick Oloko is a professor of English and a literary giant. You're welcome once again. He was my supervisor for my second master's. And I have my colleague here, Dr. Kende Olojede from FCT, Dr. Nike Bafunsho from FCT Akoka, and my colleague, one of my mentees, Dr. Olukemi Adetuyolu Francis. You're welcome. So please, it is very important that we keep track of all our guests. So we are doing e-registration. We need to practice what we do. So there is a barcode that will be taken round. Please, if you've not registered, please do the registration. Then you have access to the program. So much. Let's move on. The next reading.
Yes, I'm tempted to just mention a few names just for, of course, I'm more than delighted to that my Egmont, Soshinobi is here. Is actually my mentor. And under his wings, I grew up right under his wings in Punch many years ago. I'll never forget those days. And I'm profoundly grateful to you, sir, for all you do. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. He also had other engagements today, but had to set them aside just to be here. I can see NEB. Well, it's Mr. Eniola Bello, actually, the managing director of this day. But if you call him NEB, you're on your own.
Am I permitted? Okay, NEB, you're welcome, sir.
I think, and I can see Mr. Bayo Alabidun, and also my brother from City Point Chambers, sitting right to his left, Mr. Adepoju. Thank you very much. Well, there are still so many more. Please permit me for breaching protocol to make these recognitions. They are very important to me. But I promise you, I'll just keep straight to book reading, which you have asked me.
So please.
So, all right. So I will take the next reading from Bishop.
Bishop.
That's my Lord spiritual.
Bishop, welcome, sir. Nice to see you again.
Okay, so I'm going to take the next reading from, and we're almost close to the end. We'll make this pretty fast so that we can be engaged in terms of feedback from the hall. I'm taking my next reading from chapter 9. And that chapter is entitled Using AI and Keeping Your Originality. And the epigram on that chapter begins with a very favorite quote of mine from a professor emeritus of computer science. His name is Oren Ezioni. He's an Italian. And he says, and I quote, AI is a tool. The choice about how it gets deployed is ours. AI is a tool. The choice about how it gets deployed is ours. I take the reading now, just a few passages. The first time someone suggested to me that a robot could write for me, I laughed it off. Ha 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 ha. How is that possible? I thought the discussion was over. A few days later, he curated a number of my past articles, fed them into a digital loop, and produced a copy that stunned me. Were decades of my literary effort going to be undermined by a generative tool? Was it finally true what Time magazine said in its cover of 5 November 2009, that journalism, an essential part of literary creativity, was finally in its death throes? Not so fast. By the time I inspected my computer repurposed content closely, I found that even though the artificial intelligence, the AI tool, had made a good effort at copying my imprint, my DNA was still intact. If you have a copy of the book, I'm turning now to page 82 with the subheading Man and Machine War or Synergy. The allure of AI writing is undeniable. Tools like Grammarly, Jasper, ChatGPT, and others offer a range of services from grammar checking to style suggestions and even content generation. However, the danger lies in over-reliance on them, which may result in losing personal touch that defines your unique voice and style. AI is programmed to follow patterns. It lacks the human ability to feel emotions, the intuition, and the unique experiences that shape a writer's voice. Hence, while it can provide a strong foundation or a helpful aid, it is crucial that your own voice remains predominant. For the benefit of students here, I'll just take a small passage about my engagement with AI when I put AI to the test, just to find out how good it is at answering questions about its utility for writing. So here was an engagement I had with AI. I asked the question to AI, and my question was, how do you use AI in your writing process? This was a question from me to AI. And that question came back to me in form of an answer from Jane Doe. And Jane said, I use AI mainly for initial drafts and editing. It helps me overcome writer's block and speeds up the mundane editing process. However, I ensure that the final process resonates with my voice by revising extensively. I asked a further question. Have you found any particular AI tool to be especially helpful? And Jane answers to me, yes. Tools like Grammarly for editing and Jasper for brainstorming have been quite useful. They provide a fresh perspective and they also help me to save time. And then I asked again, how do you ensure your originality shines through despite the AI? And Jane of the AI fame answers, and he says, it's all about the revision. I use AI as a tool, not a crutch. The final narrative should reflect my thoughts, emotions, and style. I review every suggestion made by AI critically and decide whether it aligns with my narrative or not. And then the final question. Do you have any advice for writers looking to balance AI usage with maintaining their originality? And there's the answer. Understand the AI tools you are using and never stop honing your craft. It's a balance that ensures efficiency without compromising originality. End of passage. Thank you.
Beautiful reading.
Thank you so much. Beautiful reading. And I actually find your engagement with AI itself very interesting. I knew you were trying to navigate and find your balance within that. I have a couple of questions here. Talking about literary creativity. Of course, which journalism is a part of. How can AI promote and challenge our literary creativity? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Great question. Another great question. The thing about journalism is that, again, I like to answer such questions by telling stories. Okay, it's okay to tell a story.
Yeah.
And so I remember back in the day, and my mom, Mr. Oshinobi, will remember during the Gulf War, 1991, the first Gulf War. Punch. Then we didn't have, we didn't have internet. That was before the internet, and we didn't have the. Then there was a satellite. There was this sort of satellite that you used to receive, and some of those satellites were as big as you can imagine, very large things that, but we could not even afford it. We were we're just managing. We couldn't afford it, and so I remember then that what we used to do, but they had it at Sheraton Hotel. So we would send a reporter off to Sheraton Hotel. I would drink a bottle of Coke all day, and then you'd be watching CNN, and then and then come back, and then return, and then Mr. Godwin Inziaka, then, who was the Sunday editor, will go and do cutout from magazine, planes dropping bomb, and all of those things. That was, I'm just saying, that was journalism as it then was.
Yes.
So I'm sure some people are walking back memory lane.
That was journalism. We're just trying to report a war, which, if there was a war, God forbid, any part of the world today, right there where you are seated on your mobile devices, remember what's going on in Gaza. You are just right there, real time, and you are witnessing both the horror and the tragedy unfolding just before your eyes. Now, that was the sort of thing that, so the change, and just to cut it to the chase, the sort of sea change that technology or the mobile devices have brought is that it has cut off much of the drudgery. Those days, one of the greatest challenges we had as reporters going out to report was going with a tape recorder. You go with a tape recorder and you come back, and my goodness, there were some people who were doing just transcription. I can't imagine it, and all of that cut into that. That's not journalism. Journalism is storytelling. All right, that is essentially what it does. But imagine the amount of time that you took to gather the news, to process, and to distribute the news. That took a significant amount of the creative effort that ought to go to storytelling, which is basically what journalism is about. I remember once, and I tell another story. Once when we were tired of drivers playing games, to be a newspaper house those days was also to have a chain of, you become a transport company. But you are not a transport company. You are journalism, you are a content provider. But we did everything, including having massive presses and having chains of distribution bands. And so one of those days, I went with Egbon Oshinubi to Wele drivers who were coming, and we went to the toll gates. Drivers who will marry wives outside stations and do all kinds of things outside what they were, to use Babangida's phrase, outside what they were hired to do. Now, all of that was effort we ought to have put into improving the quality of journalism. One of the greatest things that technology has done, it has significantly reduced the barrier of entry, and allowed those of us who are journalists to do the main work of storytelling, which cannot be a substitute. AI cannot. It cannot. The nuances of a story. The feeling, the mood in this room. AI cannot capture the mood in this room. Can't capture you shaking, what you are going through as you are shaking your head. I imagine what you are thinking, But AI cannot capture that. But that essentially is what journalism is about. Telling the story. So what AI has done is to help cut the drudgery. So we leave the basic work of drudgery, the spade work, and then on top of that, we can tell our stories as true journalists.
Thank you so much. Beautiful. A takeaway from this is that humans are not made for AI. AI is made for humans, as tools to let us cope with the real storytelling, the content we are creating. And therefore, we should not subsume our critical thinking. This is very important because this is a battle, lecturers face at the university now. You give students assignments, they give you 100% AI. You keep sending them back and so on. You should not subsume your critical thinking and your creativity under AI. You should use AI to cut your work, to cut straight your work and focus on the content of the storytelling so that your voice, your style, and your emotions will show. A round of applause for girls. Okay. Thank you for a very beautiful response. Okay, the next reading.
Yes, so we'll go straight to chapter
Thank
13. And that after that, there'll be 2 more chapters and we'll be done with the book reading segment. So chapter 13, I start chapter 13, which is making money. You love making money, don't you?
Sure.
Sure. So I think I love making money too. Yeah? So chapter 13 is actually at the heart of the book, which is about making money. And I start with an epigram by Bill Gates, which is content is king. And I'll just take a few passages from there. It is good if you trained as a journalist, but you don't really need a degree in anything to create content for which you can earn money. While a number of traditional or mainstream platforms and businesses are scratching their heads, wondering where the next client check will come from, smarts in the new creators economy are leveraging value to make earnings. There is a bit of history to the tough war that broke out after the increasing adoption of new media in the late 1980s. First, traditional media practitioners didn't take it too seriously. Then, as adoption spread, especially among younger audiences, thereby attracting larger audiences, changing media consumption habits, and shifting advertising spend, panic set in. This chapter, and I'm just going to summarize a few of the things that this chapter talks about, does the following. A, if you're reading with me, I'm now at page 124. This chapter aims to do the following: to share tools for developing minimum viable content, explore how to use data and analytics as guides, explain how to master the art of value creation, show how to lock in audiences and monetize content. And so there are some tips that sort of summarize this, and I'd like to just take a few of those tips. Tip number 1, the power of 1,000. Kevin Kelly, an optimist and motivational writer, said in an article in Tim Ferriss's book, Tools of Titans, that 1,000 true fans are all you need to make things happen. I quote him now. To be a successful creator, he says, you don't need millions of dollars or millions of customers, millions of clients, or millions of fans. To make a living as a craftsperson, a photographer, a musician, a designer, an author, an animator, app maker, entrepreneur, or inventor, you need only thousands of true fans, end of quote. Kelly, whose example was earlier used in chapter 4 of this book, recommends 2 basic steps. A, create enough each year that can earn an average of $100 per true fan, and B, have a direct relationship with your fans. Another tip, it's tip number 3 in the book, specialize. So remember, the first one is power of 1,000, and the second one is specialize. Not many clients will be willing to pay for services that do not have any special value. One of the reasons why the Financial Times is one of the world's most successful paid online services is that stockbrokers and investors generally can hardly match its quality elsewhere. Specialize in what you are best at and do it like no other. And it won't be long before the value you generate begins to earn. And the final tip from this chapter: consistency. Remember, power of 1,000. Remember, specialize. And another tip from this chapter is consistency. Gold is hardly found on the surface. It takes lots of digging, persistently and consistently, to strike it. Clients don't want to part with money if they are unsure you will be here during the next Harmattan. It is by consistency that trust in your brand will grow, and with it, willingness by users to reward you. End of reading from this chapter. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
So much takeaways. Power of 1,000, specialization, and consistency. I hope we'll write this somewhere where we can easily see it every time. Thank you so much for that beautiful reading. And making money. When I saw the epigram, I laughed. We're talking about making money. And you're talking about content is the key. Content is the key to making money.
Yeah.
I was expecting something like money is the key or key. Don't you think so? Money is the key. We're all looking for money. But I actually got what you're talking about, because you don't set out initially to make money. From the interviews that when I was going through Daily Olojede and the rest, later. But persistence, standardization will take you there over time. I have two questions around this area. The first one is that when I look at the stories of the people, because I actually read this chapter very well, of the references you made to people we can relate with making money through the media, today Ed North, Linda KG, Adeola Fayem, and Smalley, and so on. I saw that these people write less. We're talking about writing, but they actually write less. They use a lot of multimedia images to beef up their contents. And my question to you, when we were in the journalism school, we were taught in silos. If you are in broadcasting, you don't have any business for print, photography, advertising, and so on. But we see those people, putting thoughtfully of all these experiences together to push their content. The question to, because I'm the curriculum developer, and I know we have lecturers of journalism here, how does this affect, the journalism curriculum in Nigeria? And how do we start looking forward to incorporate all of this together?
A great question. Thank you very much, Bob. I think that basically what is happening is that journalism curriculum and journalism teachers, and I'd like to think I'm a pseudo-journalism teacher, will have to try to catch up with changes and evolution in technology. Because if you look at the curriculum and some of the textbooks that students who study journalism use, let's just leave it at that, all right? So we need to do a whole lot to catch up, which was one of the reasons why I have written this. One of my motivations for writing this book. As a matter of statistics, I know that in 2021, 12,401 students applied to study journalism in the 136 journalism institutions in Nigeria. The previous year, that was about 2,000 more than in the previous year, which was 2020. You can say it was a COVID year, so it may have affected admission and all of that. But journalism is the 5th most subscribed course and I'm speaking data, StatiSense, and you can go and check that out. But then you ask yourself, what are the resources, what are the tools available to students to use? It does seem like we have to learn a thing or two from non-traditional journalists. And look, let me just be honest with you. Journalism has benefited a lot more from the diversity from people with non-journalism background that have come into the profession. Far more than we are often willing to admit. So the point is that we could use, I'm not saying everything that some of these content creators do for money is right. No. But I'm saying that what we need to do, we could learn from how they use these tools And because we are trained as master storytellers and get ahead of them, we're not doing enough of that. And the place to start, in my view, will be from the classroom. How we can use storytelling tools. The truth about it is that if you look at people read, there is an acute shortage of attention span. Attention span has gone way down
Yes.
what it used to be. So long form writing, people are still trying to develop long form writing, but it's not as popular as it used to be. 60-65% of Nigeria's population are people you'll find playing in this playground. So you then have to ask yourself, what kinds of tools do they relate with if you want to catch them? Where I end, because of our time, I remember my son came to my office time ago, and I brought a bunch of the file of newspapers, quite a bunch, and I gave him to read. And he just took it politely and he put it aside and he continued. I said, read papers now. He said, oh, I read the papers. I said, what do you mean, oh, I read the papers? You have not opened the papers. He said, I've taken all everything that I want and read it. I've already got on to it. This is the thing that brought the money with which I trained you for. Why? What that? Read this paper. But the fact of it is that he had consumed all the news he wanted from his mobile phone, from the devices he wanted to use. We need to, and there are tools that can make consumption and engagement with content easier. We have to find and learn and use these things and introduce them early on in our schools and in our newsrooms. Thank you.
Thank you, Soni, for curriculum review. Thank you so much, beyond journalism. It cuts across all professions. Because knowledge is no more in silos. It's what you can do with what you have. And therefore, we keep learning, we keep engaging. And that story actually reminds me of when we were growing up, I was always following my uncle to the Anglican church. And there are always some old men behind the back pew that will come with Tribune and Punch and Vanguard to be reading the newspapers all through the service. I don't think I see anyone doing that now. Do you remember? And they will read from page. That is their own. They are just accompanying their children and their wives to the church. They will just read page to page. But now, even before you buy this, I wonder how. Of course, that's why traditional media houses are also trying to reinvent, which is the next chapter actually, reinventing yourself. Because we have, like you said, less attention span and just want to get the gist of the matter and leave the rest. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so next reading. We have about 28 minutes left.
Yes, Prof.
So we're keeping track of time.
Yes, so I was going to suggest, Prof, that some of the examples in chapter 14 I'd already shared.
Yeah.
So if it's okay, and I'm happy to engage after, I'm happy to spend the whole day here just having a conversation. But for time's sake, I was going to suggest that I just share the epigram, speak slightly to the epigram, and then go and read chapter 15 so that we can have time to get feedback from them.
Yes,
if it's
nice.
okay.
That's
right.
That's okay.
So chapter 14 is reinventing yourself in changing times, as Prof has said. And the epigram that introduces this chapter is a quotation from one of the gurus, Stephen Covey, the 8th habit, which is from effectiveness to greatness. And he said, and I quote, your power to choose your direction of your life allows you to reinvent yourself, to change your future, and to powerfully influence the rest of creation. The power to choose, and the power to choose right. That is essentially what this chapter 14 is talking about. And the two basic examples when you go to chapter 14 and read it are examples that I took from the lives of two people whose journey I found very fascinating. Professor Tony Falola, whom we all know, at 71 or 72, Professor Tony Falola is so active in both this space. And I asked him a question, why is he doing, I just would like to read his response, and then that will be it for me. So here's what Professor Tony Falola, who has he's a 70-year-old man and is so super duper active, you won't believe it. So I asked him, I said, look, Prof, how are you competing with young boys like us? And he said, old is not defined by age. Old is not defined by age. People talk about chronological and biological age. And some people even talk about sociological age. But the fundamental lesson is, which Professor Tony Falola said, is that old is not defined by age. I'd like to pause there. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take, and then we take the final chapter.
I think we should just move to the next
chapter. All right,
great.
So, excellent.
Thank you.
So we'll take the last chapter, chapter 15, and this is the only chapter of the book which does not have an epigram. Again, it's the interview I had with two iconic journalists, Mr. Dele Olojede, who's a Pulitzer Prize winner, Nigeria's first and only Pulitzer Prize winner so far, and one of the iconic young ladies who got a clear path for herself as well, Toyosi Ogunsheye. I had interviews with them, and I just take excerpts of my interviews with them, starting with the interview I had with Mr. Dele Olojede, which was his first major interview after the next experiment. This was the first major interview that he gave. And so now here's one of the questions, one of the interesting questions I asked him. What special skills does a writer require to distinguish himself? Repeat. What special skills does a writer require to distinguish himself? And here is what Mr. Olojede said. First, a commitment to the craft itself, that you love it, that it is not something your parents told you to do and you dutifully accepted. That was the first thing he said. Now, second of all, one or two of the things he said. Second of all, I asked him, and he said, the second thing is that you have to be a committed journalist. You can't be somebody who is jealous of bankers any more money than you. The second thing for me is that commitment allows you to apply yourself over time to getting better at practicing your craft. The third thing he said, and I'll stop at number 3, I think that you have to have an abiding sense of justice and fairness in this world. That it is important to you that through your work, some measure of justice occasionally can manifest. Those are the 3 fundamental things he said that go to the heart of my interview with him. And then let me also just take a quick extract from my interview with Toyosi, and we'll end it with that. She worked with BBC. She has a very impressive and intimidating profile for, and so I asked her the question. Let me take this question. I said, how can young writers use artificial intelligence to improve the quality of their work without being over-dependent on it or perhaps yielding to its abuse? And this is what she said. By understanding that AI abuse will ultimately kill the profession, knowing that human beings generally crave connection and identity, and you should keep that in focus. Many people will watch TV because they like a newscaster. That's connection. Growing up, people bought newspapers because of their favorite columnist, because their favorite columnist was writing for the day. That is connection. The more we dilute connection, the more we are at risk. End of reading. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have just 2 minutes to the end of this segment. And no, I have 3 questions pending, but I'll take only one so that we can save time. The chapter title is actually In Life, Luck and God Matter. But I saw that this chapter actually went beyond that, because it looked at the life of 2 prominent journalists that traced how they were able to nurture their growth to international recognition. And talking about connection now, because that was the summary, connecting to people through your content, and also connecting to God, because we were talking about grace of God, So connection. Now let me ask you this: which is more important, the depth of your writing or the spread of your readership? Since we're talking about connection, I'm always talking about followers. So which is more important?
I think for me, both are important, but what I try to avoid is obsession with followership. It's important to get to write in a deep, profound way. And I remember asking Dele Olojede, he's a master of long-form writing.
Yes.
I said, look, looks like you are going to be endangered now. He said, no, I mean, he's still invested in long-form writing. So for me, it's important that writing has, because journalism is about meaning and context. Essentially, that's what journalism is about. Any other thing is just embellishment. Meaning and context. People have heard that, what was the biggest news? Okay, the Pope Francis, died yesterday. So if you are telling me today that Pope Francis died, you are wasting my time. All right? I'm not saying that out of a sense of lack of, but as a news consumer, you must tell me, what does it mean? What does the death of Pope Francis mean for the Catholic Church? For the 1.4 million followers of the Catholic Church? What does it mean for the next Pope? And for his agenda as a change agent, for example? That's meaning, that's context. So for me, writing has to have depth for it to be meaningful. If you can get people connect to it by using various forms of technology, which is one of the great things that technology has done for us, we're able to connect with far greater audiences, all right? But I'm not obsessed by followership. So if I don't have, there are some followers who have, some content providers who have more followers than all the newspapers in Nigeria put together. I kid you not. But that I'm not really, that does not enchant me, all right? I'm comfortable with my space, all right? And with the purpose of the message that I intend to share. Doesn't mean you are always right. But for me, if you can get the message by as far as possible through the various devices and platforms, good. But I think both are equally important, but one should not be obsessed by either of the two.
So in other words, we need to create a balance and focus. And like I infer from, some of the interviews, focus on the depth and the connections to keep expanding, because people want to see the meaning, like you said, in what you're reading.
Correct.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So a round of applause for the author for taking us through this beautiful reading session and question and answer. And I am sure we have a lot of takeaways from here. But please, this is just the tip of the iceberg. You need to get engaged. When I say engaged, I'm not saying just reading. There are different levels to reading. So engage with the book so that you can deepen your knowledge and your practice of journalism. Thank you so much. I'm very time conscious because I'm trying to be like Mr. Azu. We have about 18 minutes left. Out of the 18 minutes, we'll use, before I go to the next item, please, we're in Africa. I have my 3 beautiful sisters here, and they are also the sisters to the author, Mrs. Adeolua. Please, you're welcome. Alaja Mohammed, you're welcome. And Alaja Jari, you're welcome. When you see these 3 powerful women, go to sleep, actually. And they are also my sisters, so you're welcome. So thank you. And we also welcome the rest of us that are joining us in the course of the program. As a quick reminder, please, there is a scan code being taken around. Scan it so that you can register your presence at this event. Thank you so much. So we quickly go to item 5 on the agenda, which is question and answers and comments. And because we need to save time, we should restrict this a bit. So we'll take the first 3 and we'll allow the author to answer the first 3. We'll allow the author to, if we still have time left, Then we'll now take the next batch. Please forgive me. We promise you 1.5 hours. Please, I need someone to come and take the mic. So I need you to raise your hands up if you have questions. Okay, Odetunde Lateef. Odetunde Lateef is an undergraduate of University of Lagos, one of my best students, right? I'm happy you're about to ask questions. Okay, one more person here. Can I be gender sensitive, sir? And age sensitive. You can always engage with the author. Okay, the young lady from NIJ, you're welcome. And okay, Professor Oloko. Okay. So you take this. Thank you. So let's start from Odetunde Lateef. Move forward so that we can save time.
Bring my
And 1 minute, please. Straight to the point.
My question is twofold. The first one is what Mr. Azu has already pointed out, but I just need clarification on it concerning using social media and at the same time working for these newspaper outlets. Some of us, our dream from as a kid has been to be able to also work. As a young person, I used to read from Tribune, Sunday Tribune, and a lot of that. So I dreamt that, oh, I also want to write as a columnist, as that, these papers. But we feel that that is quite out of reach now, since there's the availability of social media for us to use. So do you advise us to also delve into that aspect of the career? Or to just focus on the media part, on the social media part, using the internet, or something like that. Then, secondly, is the issue of fact checking in the news outlet. Using AI do you think AI is reliable enough for us to fact check news that we want to publish out there? Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next one. Talking about working, exploring with the social media, exploring their writing skills with the social media, then fact checking of AI, data. The second, hello, please give her the mic. What's your name? Please have the mic. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Rachel, I'm a student of NIJ. And I like the fact that it's not just the book, there's also a workbook especially for students too. So by the time you go to the workbook, the workbook can also help us to understand, because we can get to a part where there's a question that we don't understand. It will actually take us back to the book to help us understand more. So I would like to know, how long did it take you to write the two, and what were the challenges? And I also like to know, what's your writing routine like, and how do you stay motivated?
Beautiful questions. Thank you. So, Professor Oloko, thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me follow up with what she has said. Given the fact that we are also talking to young people that we are still mentoring. I came in when you were saying that we should write the way we speak. I don't know what context you will give to that, because we've always taught our students to do exactly the opposite. Why?
Yes,
because you need to be able to move from your writing, from your speaking to your writing. You develop your writing skill very adequately, and then getting to the point where you write the way you speak is at that very advanced stage where it becomes possible to be like you, to write memorably and then speak memorably, So what context did you give to that? Because it should be the other way around. Develop your writing skills adequately before you begin to speak well and write well.
Thank you, Professor Oloko. So we'll take the first three. And for that question, this is, an academic setting. We interrogate knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you for reminding me. I almost thought I was in the market. Well. Thank you very much. I mean, the feedback that I've received is an indication of the level of engagement. And I really deeply and genuinely appreciate you and see more people streaming in. I know there are folks online, and all of that, who may like to drop their questions in the chat room. If I can't take all the questions now, I'm more than happy and available to take all the questions after, because we know there are people from different parts of the world engaged to this exercise and watching us as we speak. Now, let me start with Prof, if I may, about the context in which I said write the way you speak. I know that for us as Africans, there are multiple challenges to expression, especially in a mother tongue that is not ours. Some of us will first of all think in our mother tongue, then we'll translate it. You first of all think in your mother tongue.
Then what to translation. Yes. You do transliteration.
Transliteration. You understand? So that really that can potentially present an obstacle to complete self-expression. I understand that. But the context in which I was talking about writing the way you speak is that the temptation also, if you also develop that protocol, so to speak, of which we, it's just to keep it simple. Some people, and I gave the example of, it's just for simplicity and for authenticity, so that people, when they hear you, when they pick up the script, there are some people, if you pick up their writing, if you read, even though they have not spoken to you, know that they are the ones writing. But if I choose to write exactly like Charles Dickens, or like Sam Omasheye, or NEB, or my president Benga Adefayi, or Femi Adesina, you read it, because as you read what people write, you are hearing their voices, even though you are reading text. So you ought to be able to make a connection. That really is the context in which I said that. But I'm happy to take on, speak about this a bit more. Then the question, it's simple but very difficult. How did you? How long it took me to write the books? It took me a year, 9 months to 1 year to write both books. But the other part of the question, the part B of the question, is more difficult. What were some of the challenges? If you are in Nigeria, if you want to wait for all the challenges, if you want to exhaust the challenges before you do anything, you will wait forever. Because I remember there will be times when I'll be writing generators on the other side, or the generator here, NEPA running. I mean, it looks like you are never going to finish the job anyway, because of distractions. All right. But there are a few rules that helped me. I have what is famously called the 1R rule. The 1R rule, which once you get up in the morning, who's the author of that 1R rule? Remind me, the 1R rule. Is it famous? This Amazon, the man who has the Amazon man, what's his name? Jeff Bezos. Yeah, that's his name. He has what is called the 1R rule. So there are times, especially in the mornings, he doesn't touch his phone. All right. He just tries to get the presence of mind to do the things that are important. So I found that in spite of all the challenges of NEPA, non-NEPA calls, work pressure, especially if you're also an administrator at the office, I find that I prioritize writing at the time when my energy is optimal. And everybody knows what is optimal time for me or energy may not be for you. So you have to find that place in the center of you where you can optimally express it. For some people, it's nighttime. Some people are like, they don't sleep at night. Some people, it's first thing in the morning. Some people, just find that time that is optimal for you, and it will help you scale your challenges significantly. It won't remove all of them, but it will help you manage them significantly. And finally, the other question about the focus between being just social media play actors or serious content providers. Well, it really depends on what you want. I mean, you know what you want clearly. And I think Prof talked about being focused. All right. Some people are just play actors, but even in their play acting, they make money, they create content for which they get a lot of, so it depends on what you want, I've never been confused about what I wanted. Even though my wife said there are only two things she thinks I can do: journalism, everything. At everything else, I'm a failure. I accept humbly. But you must know, what works for you and play to your strength. That would be my advice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm sure that we have some very profound answers to our questions. We have about 6 minutes left. But can I create the indulgence of the audience, maybe to add a bit of 10 minutes more? Is it okay? I'm before my veteran seniors. 5 minutes, okay, so that we can take just 2 more questions. Then we'll close the session. So second round, Professor Inkoa, and one more. Okay, please give her the mic. Thank you. I think we have just one question left, and that saves our time.
Thank you very much.
Which second person? Oh, any sir.
Can I go ahead?
Please, thank you.
So I listened very carefully, and the area of interest to me is the fact that we that teach the Gen Zs, we find that they are in a hurry. So that perseverance is what they do not have. And now you have told us that we can write things to monetize it. How long exactly do you think they can wait and find that they can't make money? What do you think would happen if they had written and then there was no money? They leave it immediately and look at something that becomes like prank. Doing that gives them more money. So what do you say about that?
Thank you. So thank you. Noted. Seniola Bello.
Thank you, Prof. Mine is more of a comment, and I want both of you to respond to it, because it cuts across both what the author wrote and what happens in the academic environment, training of students, and then also taking off from the question you asked about whether it's the content or what you write or you follow. Now, growing up, when we were in school, it was fun to see a name when you sent letter to a newspaper. You publish, you jump up, have something written, and it was published. It was good enough to publish. Because to get it published that time, there was a lot of, what was it called, gatekeepers. You have to go through whatever, write your notice well. But today, because of technology, there is no people write and it goes on social media, because social media and all these things we use. And what I noticed as a columnist, and I believe you agree with me, is that each time you even take the page to read comments on any of the articles, you get pissed off. It's abuses, name calling. What you wrote about, they won't even touch it. You say you don't understand, but you didn't read. So, what is happening? There is no engagement from readers. Very few people really care to comment on what one will threaten you, and the most common one is, if they like what you wrote, they say, brilliant. But if they don't like it, how much they pay you to write it? You collect money. How are they going to see? No engagement, zero engagement. How do we cope with this?
Go with it.
There is some that you read. Grammatical errors. Language is so poor. You now wonder, what do people learn in school?
Thank you so much. Maybe I won't answer your question actually, but I will also, because I have one question penned down here that I didn't ask because of time, but because of his comment, maybe I'll just quickly add it. How will you define the gatekeeping roles of the media in contemporary times?
There's no gates. Gate has crashed.
And so how do we cope with it? Thank you so much. So 2 questions.
All right. Thanks, Prof. Let me start with the first question. I'll make this super brief. Prof, thanks very much for that question. There's what the lawyers will permit me to talk about vicarious liability. I think parents have vicarious liability, or guardians have vicarious liability for the outcome or lack of persistence. And I'll explain how. So children are growing up, and you, for example, started in a one-room apartment, all right? You're talking about perseverance. And the children, you have grown from your children, you move from one room to 2 rooms, to flat, to skyscraper, from no car to 1 car. They don't know, they see things are coming into the house. They don't know what their parents are doing to multiply wealth. They don't know. Parents don't spend enough time telling their children, thank God for those who do, enough of the story of how they came through. So they just grow up and then they find everything is provided. You are in one room, you have moved from 1 room to 2 rooms, a mansion, provided cars, they are driving cars. How often do we sit down with them and tell them the story of our own personal journey, which we want them to learn from? I don't think, it's either we don't have time or we don't think it's important. But I think the more time we spend, you may think they are not listening. Don't mind them. That's how they behave. The more time we spend telling them the stories of our own personal journey, the more likely that they will be able to find that there are values in our own lives that they have to emulate. But if they don't get it from you, or you don't make that time, they will find it on the internet. And you can't blame them for impatience. So my suggestion, this does not sound like what you should be hearing at a book reading. It sounds like what you should hear at a religious gathering or something. but I just, and it's also, I'm speaking to myself, okay? I'm not just, I'm speaking to myself. I think parents need to spend more time telling, because some of them grow and they think that life was rosy. And so when they meet difficulties or challenges, you don't understand. That my father has, what is he talking about?
1 minute left.
Okay, so that I think should help. Then, of course, the matter of engagement, which Eniola, more a comment that is, Eniola, honestly, I don't have an answer. It's the only question for which I do not have an answer. Because it's also a point of misery for me. How you write everything that you write and all. When you go to from the start to the end, you do, what are they? What did we carry? What are we throwing? Do you understand? There's hardly a link. But as to gatekeeping, which is the final point, there's no gate. All right? No, we keep, it's just it's a fancy theory of communication. It's a very fancy theory, but the gates have crashed. The barbarians have since trampled the gate over. So, we are here, some people may be transmitting everything that is happening and it's going online and it's live. So where is the gate? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's been a beautiful time with everyone. Thank you so much for the questions. Professor Ayikwa, charity begins at home. I hope you had an exciting time with me. Thank you so much.